There are two ways to define greatness. There are two ways to define greatness. One endures through consistent intensity, sustained success, and undeniable presence. The other burns violently and disappears. But for that instant, the darkness has no answer. This is an idea that can break down into just about anything, but it's also very helpful in describing the art of the episode. There are two ways to define a great episode: an episode of elevation and an episode of momentum. Allow me to explain. Episodes of elevation make their respective shows. Within their finite duration, they don't just advance the story, they redefine it. They raise the ceiling of what that series can be, and you know these episodes instinctively. They're the ones you point to when recommending a show and say, trust me bro, just get to this episode. That is an episode of elevation. A lot of easy examples also come from shows that are episodic, because when every episode is self-contained, each one has the potential to stand alone as something special. Not every episode of South Park is or can be great unless your name is Smiling Friend. Episodes of momentum only work because of everything that comes before. They are payoffs, explosions at the end of a long fuse. Ozymandias is the only episode on IMDb to score a perfect 10 out of 10, and yeah, it is that good. But its brilliance is inseparable from its context, with 5 entire seasons of build-up. Arcane is also a good one, containing one of my favorite episodes of any show, simply titled The Dangers of Snow Bunny Mind Control. I think watching this episode for the first time purely unlocked my obsession with evaluating shows in 20 to 40 minute chunks. It seems arbitrary, but I think there's a real artistry. A single episode is a promise, a statement of intent, a chance to burn brighter than the rest or to bring everything together. Arcane Season 2, Episode 7 ties everything together by asking, what if? But what I want to focus on right now is a show that asks this very question over and over and over again. ReZero Season 1, Episode 15 is nothing short of a miracle. Its very existence feels like it shouldn't work. It's as if for one fleeting moment, everything aligned at Studio White Fox. The voice acting, the writing, the direction, the music, every department locked in at the exact same time. But the strangest and also coolest part of the episode is that it introduces a level of cinematography that ReZero never reaches again. It appears here fully formed, breathtaking, and then vanishes, never to be seen again. Right now, you are hearing a genius rendition of the soundtrack made specifically for this episode, and I just don't think I've ever heard an anime OST or any OST so damn beautiful in my life. And whenever you watch this episode, I'm looking at you when I say this, watch it in sub. No hate, of course, to dub voice actors. Dub is actually phenomenal in this episode too. But the problem is that this is a different beast. By now, you probably feel it. Passion was injected into every single detail of this episode, and honestly, give this level of care to any other episode and it would probably feel out of place, because I don't think any other episode would be worthy of it. But this episode is different. It portrays Subaru at his psychological low. Every ounce of confidence he spent the last 10 episodes painfully building up is violently torn apart. Everything he believed he was becoming is stomped into the ground. The episode starts with Subaru discovering that everyone he knows and loves is dead. And then, without explanation, he dies too. This here is the secret behind the episode's immersion. Nothing is clean, nothing is clear. Events unfold in an eerie, almost dreamlike haze that keeps you desperate for answers. On Subaru's next loop, he's seen better days. Rem is practically the only thing keeping him alive, and this is where her character truly shines. So much so that she essentially carries the narrative for half the episode. But looming over everything is the obvious implication that if Subaru does nothing, the massacre will just simply repeat itself. Eventually, they run into the cause of it all, the Witch's Cult. After 15 episodes of build-up, we finally get a name and face to place on the group. This is Betelgeuse, in one of the greatest villain introductions in anime. At first glance, Betelgeuse is absurd. An eye-twitching, self-mutilating sadist clawing at his skin one moment and brutally beating the fuck out of his cultist buddies the next. He feels so over the top, so exaggerated that he almost feels kind of goofy. But as the scene goes on, something changes. There's a moment where his words stop being word salad, where the madness sharpens into something disturbingly lucid. There's this one moment where Betelgeuse sees right through Subaru, accusing him of faking his insanity and dismissing him as a poor imitation of the real thing. You know in SpongeBob where Patrick is acting like his ordinary self, but then out of the blue he just says something really thought-provoking and real? Watching Betelgeuse is kind of like watching a genocidal Patrick Star. His actions are gruesomely absurd and ridiculous, but his words hold this level of self-awareness. This is the man forcing an interaction with a mind-broken Subaru who is so traumatized he can't even form words. So at this point, put yourself in the shoes of Betelgeuse. You are insane. You have this nasty ass green bowl cut and you are faced with the protagonist at his absolute low. What do? Oh,
怠惰なる剣の見えざる手です。
There are a lot of hard to watch scenes in ReZero, but I think this probably takes the cake for me. This is how you introduce a villain. Rem, barely clinging to life, reaches Subaru, frees him from his chains, and confesses her love with her final breath. If you still prefer Amelia at this point, I don't even know what to say to you at this point. So Subaru sobers up. Nothing like the gruesome and torturous death of the love of your life to snap you back into reality, right guys? Carrying Rem's body, Subaru wanders back towards the mansion as snow begins to fall. And there it is again, the same scenery as before, the same outcome. He screams out, and just as you may be thinking this episode can't get any crazier, a colossal beast bursts through the castle, utters some cryptic dialogue, and Subaru's head falls off. The credits roll, the music hits, fucking cinema. This episode characterizes one word: sloth. Every single tragedy that unfolds is a direct result of Subaru choosing to do nothing in the face of annihilation. His inaction, his paralysis, is what led to this. As the world burns, he hesitated. And as someone who procrastinates professionally, this episode felt like a personal attack. It was honestly terrifying. But it's no coincidence that Betelgeuse is the authority of sloth, because Subaru was being truly slothful. Episode 15 is ReZero's moment of elevation. It's the episode that sold me completely on the series, and honestly, nothing else in the show ever quite reached this height again. But the same can't be said for this next episode.
That's the problem. I've been here too long for my own good. 3 years of this madness. Surrounded by idiots. We were kids. Why did I let myself devolve into such a half-assed piece of shit as a warrior? No road left but the one that leads to the end.
It is a recent phenomenon to hate on this man. After the extremely controversial ending of Attack on Titan, a lot of people suddenly pretend Isayama was never a good writer in the first place, and I want to push back against that. When deciding which episodes to include in this video, the biggest challenge was limiting myself to one episode for Attack on Titan, because I was split between like 6 different episodes for AOT, I can't even lie. Therefore, today I won't be talking about this episode or this episode or this, I will be talking about this. Season 2, Episode 6, Warrior, which is in my opinion the absolute peak of Isayama writing. Initially, this episode feels like the complete opposite of ReZero's episode 15. It doesn't announce itself. There's no cinematic flexing, no grand direction. The subject matter feels almost mundane, and it doesn't even skip the opening. Essentially, the subject of this episode surrounds the extremely shocking reveal of Ymir. You see, Ymir is a human that can turn into a Titan, just like Eren, a development that came completely out of left field for every character to experience it. And this sounds pretty interesting as the focal point of an episode, but the only problem is that this whole reveal happened last episode. So naturally, we expect episode 6 to revolve around the fallout and the consequences of this coming to light. But there's actually a second unresolved bombshell waiting to be addressed in this episode. That is Krista's true identity as Historia Rice, a member of the royal family. 2 seismic reveals, both demanding attention. Therefore, this episode is just about tying up loose ends, about narrative housekeeping, right? I'm sure that by now, almost 8 years after the airing of this episode, most of us know that this episode isn't about Ymir or Historia. But that's the entire point of this episode: misdirection. From its opening moments, Isayama uses narrative and visual framing to conceal the truth in plain sight. Narratively, the episode presents us with a seemingly reasonable scenario. The scouts are shaken and they need to collect themselves. With two revelations of unprecedented magnitude occurring simultaneously, obviously they would need some downtime to discuss everything that went down. But this expectation collapses if you simply take a close look at how the scouts are portrayed in this episode. There is no emotional disarray, no visible anxiety. In its place, there's this calm composure that feels artificial, almost rehearsed. And that disparity is the first red flag that this episode is actively deceiving us. As the storm sets in our favorite Marleyan couple enters the scene, the direction of the show seems suspiciously evasive. The camera insists on pulling our focus off the figures who actually matter, favoring Her Highness and her lesbian ship. That is until Eren speaks.
Two of you have been driven far enough away from your hometown as it is. This is it. This is where we draw the line.
Truer words were never spoken. Home! Let's go! We've been here long enough. Compared to everything else we've had to go through, the rest is easy.
Have you ever seen this man talk so much? If it hasn't been already, red flags should be firing off at this point. The normally quiet, practically invisible Bertolt is suddenly talkative, but he's speaking nonsense. Yet it seems to have a profound visceral effect on Reina, like something clicked within him. This is where we can truly start to analyze the absolute art that is how this reveal is handled. Instead of focusing on Eren's confusion to slowly build up the stakes, we intentionally cut away, leaving us in this state of psychological suspension. We know that something was wrong with that interaction, but we're denied the time or space to process it because the episode is pacing in a completely different direction altogether. A third mystery. But if trends follow, this will likely just end up being another distraction. It has to do with the fact that there is no breach in Walmaria, despite mass appearances of Titans within. It seems inconceivable, and the fact that something like this happens now after 5 years.
I'm the armored Titan. He's the colossal.
Wait, pause. Reina casually drops the biggest reveal of the entire show, and then that's it. We just cut back to Hanji talking about Titan sex or something. I'm sure the first time you watched this, your immediate reaction was to rewind a little and make absolutely certain that you didn't just hallucinate that. This is Isayama genius, dropping the single most consequential revelation in the entire series with such staggering indifference that it almost feels disrespectful. No build-up, no spectacle, just the truth, dropped casually into conversation and left to simmer in the viewer's mind. This plot twist wasn't revealed, it escaped. For those that might not remember, the context of this episode that is shortly revealed is that all the scouts knew that Reina and Bertolt were likely the armored and colossal titans. Pretty much everyone is forced to accept this possibility under overwhelming evidence, except Eren, who's in disbelief about everything. He argues that even if Reina were telling the truth, revealing it so casually defies logic. And then we get one of my favorite shots in the series, which accomplishes being a cool dynamic shot, but it also acts as a symbolic representation of the limbo that Reina finds himself stuck between, a soldier and a warrior. Reina proceeds to go on a brilliant meltdown that anyone with knowledge of Marley or beyond will appreciate, and the rest is history. It's a combination of expert directing on the anime side of things, writing that nobody else but Isayama can imitate, and straight up perfect sound design, which creates this absolute masterpiece of an episode. I admittedly have a huge soft spot for Attack on Titan. No other show has made me feel every single emotion like it does, and I don't personally think any other anime has ever matched it. But some came close.
Seems my master was right in her methods after all. I've spent the better part of my life in a constant state of suppression. It has become natural for me.
Why would you ever do something so foolish?
Foolish, yes, but powerful. It lets me defeat your kind.
If you take a look at all of the recent mega hitters in anime, they are all very direct with what they are. The Tel Aviv media team did a great job with their recent hit anime Solo Leveling. You can tell that they understand what gets popular. Solo Leveling is not embarrassed of what it is, and it gets to the point straight away, which is exactly why the success story of Frieren came as a real shock to me, because it's an awfully subtle show. And subtlety wasn't exactly something I thought the modern anime landscape appreciated anymore. But here we are. Frieren is a rank 1 anime, and I'm a happy man. Much like Attack on Titan, I knew I wanted to include an episode from this show in this video, but unlike AOT, the choice of which episode wasn't even a contest. I knew which one I wanted to put in this video the moment it aired in early 2024. Frieren's magnum opus, episode 10, A Powerful Mage. There are a lot of reasons to love this episode. The production, the world building, even the memes. But the reason it stands above the rest, for me, is its directness. Bear with me for a moment, because to talk about this episode is to talk about the show as a whole. I wasn't lying to you before. Frieren is a very subtle show, most of the time. World building is rarely delivered head-on, themes are expressed passively, and most understanding about the world is absorbed through implication. This subtlety is also why I noticed many people feeling conflicted during the first batch of episodes. These episodes can feel borderline unimportant, yet surprisingly dense at the same time. And that tension is deliberate. Every one of those episodes is saturated with information, but much of it has no immediate relevance to the plot. It's kind of like background radiation, details meant to sink in at a later date. One of my favorite examples of this subtlety appears in episode 2. Frieren and Fern set out to find a specific flower to decorate Himmel the hero's grave. They dedicate themselves to searching every single place they could think of, until a montage plays and a whopping 6 months pass. This is a big deal to Fern. I mean, the girl just turned 16. She just spent 5% of her entire life on this earth looking for a flower. But for Frieren, this type of thing barely registers. What follows is an incredibly realistic conversation. No melodrama, just two people with massively different perceptions of time reaching a compromise. In a roundabout, almost invisible way, the show communicates just how profoundly warped Frieren's relationship with time truly is. This kind of storytelling is Frieren's signature, but episode 10 is where that show does something daring. It starts to weaponize that subtlety, because after so much restraint, directness becomes a big deal. For context, this episode is the climax of a 3-episode arc, where Frieren and friends face off against demons that have infested a castle town. Up to this point, the series has raised a number of questions it never fully answered. What are demons really? Why does Frieren hate them so much? And why is she known as Frieren the Slayer? Instead of drip-feeding answers as usual, the episode opens the floodgates and we are shown the full picture. We cut to an ancient era where the Demon King's power is at its peak. Frieren's village is annihilated. Every family member and familiar face were slaughtered by demons. Then enters Flamme. Frieren's master could not be a more perfect narrative device for this episode. We arrive with questions and Flamme has answers. She comprehends demonkind at a fundamental level. Up to now, we've been told that demons are beasts that mimic speech to deceive humans. Flamme expands on this by revealing how demons perceive magic itself. Among them, mana is status, and aura is a physical symbol of hierarchy. But Flamme takes it further. She explains that she deliberately suppresses her mana to trick demons, because suppression is something demons never even consider. To them, it will be akin to royalty choosing to live as beggars for their entire lives. It simply doesn't compute. And because demons cannot imagine someone hiding their strength, they underestimate them. As we cut back to the present, Frieren faces Aura the Guillotine, whose power is to dominate any person who has inferior mana to her. A risky technique that she's confident in because of her large reserves of mana, but this makes it the perfect trap. And you know what happens next. Frieren aura farms low and then turns full on low tier god. The backstory works so well because it doesn't just answer our questions. It answers them and then also recontextualizes everything. Up until this point, the show has largely presented Frieren as this nostalgic, almost harmlessly detached elf girl, which is far from how we see her now, as an individual calamity for demonkind itself, a mage who has devoted her entire existence to a methodical, almost spiteful eradication of an entire race. She might be one of the greatest haters of all time. She's like the reverse Flash, but for an entire race. Episode 10 weaponizes all that subtle groundwork in previous episodes. Every quiet moment, every understated reaction culminates here to deliver on some of the most direct and badass characterization of Frieren we ever get. But this doesn't come close to how Hunter x Hunter does it.
Enough.
A lot of people fundamentally misunderstand this, and I think even more people misunderstand Gon as a character altogether. I constantly see the take that this transition came out of nowhere, that there's no chance that anyone would get this mad over losing someone they just met. But as a professional Togashi meat writer, I want to finally settle this. Hunter x Hunter has no shortage of standout episodes. I seriously debated between like 3 different episodes to put in this video, but episode 131, Anger and Light, isn't just great, it's probably the most essential episode in the entire show, because this is the episode that completes Gon as a character. Midway through the Chimera Ant arc, something unsettling begins to surface inside Gon. After losing Kite, Gon's determination sharpens into this borderline obsessive focus. The other characters feel it too. They sense that something has changed within him, even if they can't articulate it. So much so that they place their trust in this 12-year-old boy against a foe he shouldn't have any business challenging. But I'm here to tell you that this darkness present inside Gon has always been there, since the beginning. And to prove that, I'll start with this statement. Gon is a sociopath. Now that probably sounds absolutely unhinged, and at this point you might be wondering if I even watched the show to begin with. Because Gon is kind, thoughtful, earnest, arguably the most compassionate character in the entire series. In fact, one of the most common criticisms of Hunter x Hunter is that Gon is too simple and shallow for a protagonist. And I actually agree with half of that. Gon is simple, but simple does not mean shallow. He's actually a very interesting character when examined up close. Gon is a character that's riddled with these quiet contradictions that reveal an extremely warped moral framework when put together. Take the Hunter exam. This is a boy raised in a loving home, in a peaceful village, known for his innocence and kindness, and yet he watches his fellow examinees die brutal deaths and barely reacts. No fear, no dread, no nothing. Then there's this moment.
なんで殺すわけないじゃん。だって俺たちおかげですごく上達したもん。ありがとう、ビノールトさん。
This man is like one of the most reprehensible figures we ever meet in the show. Quite literally a mass murderer and a cannibal. And yet, because he helped Gon get stronger, Gon categorizes him as good. And finally, I want to highlight this scene. This is Gon's first kill. He takes a life for the first time as a 12-year-old and isn't fazed in the slightest. From these moments alone, a pattern emerges. Gon is kind, he is caring, but his morality is completely subjective. Good and evil are not defined by a set of principles or laws. They're defined by proximity for him. If Gon likes you, if you help him, if you exist within his emotional orbit, you're good. If you hurt someone he cares about, you're evil. Everything else is irrelevant. Beanolt is good because he helped train him. Illumi is evil because he hurt Killua. That's it. Gon isn't malicious, he's self-centered. His compassion has borders, and anyone outside those borders simply doesn't matter. By now, I can finally simplify this statement. Gon is a child. Like a real honest-to-God, emotionally underdeveloped kid who subconsciously believes the world should bend around his feelings. And when someone he truly loves is taken from him for the first time, he cannot process it. He refuses to accept that reality. He rejects it. But that rejection festers and starts to well up. And then we reach the confrontation. Neferpito, one of the king's royal guards, is, in Gon's mind, the embodiment of absolute evil. The monster who murdered Kite, the one who deserves to die. But when Gon finally faces him, Pito doesn't want to fight. He's healing an innocent girl, and this is the moment Gon breaks. He cannot reconcile the idea that evil could care about someone. His entire moral framework collapses under the weight of that contradiction. He spirals, and the only reason he didn't straight up kill Komugi and Pito on the spot is because he was reminded that he needs Pito to fix Kite. Gon has always been optimistic that things will just turn out okay because they always do. But once the hope that Kite can be healed gets extinguished, the darkness welling up inside him finally erupts. Not concerned with the mission, with the situation in the castle, with the fate of humanity, Gon becomes consumed by vengeance, and he's willing to sacrifice everything to get it. For most people, maybe except power scalers, episode 131 is an incredibly sad episode. Because even as Gon effortlessly overpowers Pito, we understand the cost. That every time his fist smashes into Pito's skull may be another step closer to his grave. Killua realized immediately as he saw it, and as his best friend, he couldn't do anything himself. There's this beautiful scene where Killua pushes Gon out of the way of Pito's attack, and they have this somber exchange of words. I always shed a tear whenever I get to the scene because this is where I'm reminded that this was just the tragic tale of a normal kid dropped into an unforgiving world and forced to mature early. Metaphorically and literally. This is why I love Togashi. He's by far my favorite writer in shonen, and he's great at really just committing to everything he wants to do. Like, yeah, Gon is a kid, but what does that mean? I feel like a lot of shows, especially anime, treat kids like short adults. I can't count on my fingers how many times shows depict kids having these PhD level conversations or doing things they're just like, bruh, come on, man. Children are deceptively hard to write, and I think Togashi handled it perfectly.
It was at that moment that the devil arrived. What does a person that exists have to do to become a fabrication? The answer is quite simple. Erase all who knew him. Erase everybody that knows his past. Everything must disappear.
Last but very much not least, I want to talk about Monster. I saved this one for the end because I actually changed my mind midway through production. Originally, I planned to talk about one of my favorite early episodes. You might recognize it from the thumbnail for this video, but funnily enough, while I was writing the script, I happened to be deep in a rewatch of this show, and somewhere along the way, I pivoted completely because it became clear the episode I had to talk about was the penultimate episode 73, The Landscape of the End. So like, yeah, spoilers for the entire show. This is not an episode you can discuss in isolation. It requires a stage, so let me set it for you. Before talking about anything, we need to understand two things: Johan's motive and the dynamic that the two main players share. Johan and Tenma. Let's start with the first. Johan Lieber is rightfully regarded as one of the greatest antagonists in anime and manga. There are countless video essays and analyses out there dissecting the psychology, the philosophy, and the symbolism behind this character. I'm not here to compete with those. That's above my pay grade. I'm illiterate. I found that explaining Johan with words is incredibly difficult because to me, he's more understood through intuition and analogies. If most villains are noise, shouting their presence to demand attention, Johan is silence. The kind that makes your own thoughts louder. He's what nothingness looks like when it learns how to speak. He lives not to exist, but to prove that existence itself is meaningless. And this sentence right here is key to understanding his whole motive. Johan's goal is never handed to us cleanly. Even through the lens of the ending, it's not clear. Rather, it's something you need to pick up through the events of the story. Early on, Johan is a shell. He's what remains after surviving 511 Kinderheim and a child defined by systemic brainwashing. So he plays a game of nihilism, treating human lives like pieces on a board. Kinda like how the kids played the rooftop game in episode 33, but on a much grander scale. But everything changes when he reads a certain picture book. With his suppressed memories restored, his twisted nature sharpens. For the first time, his malice gains direction and a purpose: revenge. And as proof of that resolve, Johan burns everything he's built over the past 20 episodes to the ground. All the scheming, all the networks, all the masks, reduced to ash so he could begin constructing something far more ambitious. Which brings us to Tenma. At a glance, the dynamic between Johan and Tenma seems simple. Tenma represents the sanctity of human life, and Johan represents its negation. But under closer inspection, it's a little deeper than that. As a man who saved his life, Tenma embodies the ideology Johan despises the most. And that's precisely why Johan is willing, eager even, to die by Tenma's hand. Because if Tenma pulls the trigger, if he violates his own principles, then Johan wins. 3 separate times throughout the series, whenever Johan is closest to death, he points to his head, daring Tenma, almost like he's saying, "Don't forget to aim, bro."
Oh no!
And with that, we finally arrive at the landscape of the end. Johan orchestrates the perfect suicide. The build-up alone is immaculate. He locates the town tied to Franz Bonaparte, the subject of his revenge, and he begins systematically isolating its residents. A corpse is found in the forest, phone lines are severed, police are murdered, guns are distributed, paranoia spreads, fear turns neighbor against neighbor, and eventually the town collapses in on itself. It's annihilation by suggestion. All of Johan's plans culminate in the episode in question. In the moment he and Tenma finally stand face to face, Johan wants 2 things: Bonaparte's death and to be killed by Tenma, so that finally he'll have his revenge and his ideology proven. But just one problem. Wait, what?
What the hell is that thing?
No. 74 episodes of ideological warfare, of this cat and mouse epic, just to end with some random fodder pulling the trigger. But then I thought about it. This is perfect. Everything about this is perfect. It was the only way Tenma could truly win. Throughout the entire series, despite carrying a gun, Tenma never kills anyone. And when everything is over, when Johan lies bleeding, Tenma does what he's always done. He saves his life. Again, it comes back full circle, and in that moment, Johan loses completely. His grand suicide fails, his ideology collapses, and Tenma's morality wins. A total victory, a spectacular ending, and one of anime's greatest episodes of momentum. I love every show I talked about in this video, and I think I want to keep it that way for this channel. Just talking about things I already mess with instead of forcing myself to analyze the intricacies of In Another World as a stripper pole or something. Half the reason for the long break was just trying to find another direction for this channel, and I think I'm starting to see it. The other reason for the break is school. Never take engineering, guys. I'm so serious. So yeah, let me know what y'all think about this video, and if you want to see more of this type of stuff. Also, let me know what are some of your favorite episodes in anime.